Our next presenter is Sally Paramo. Ms. Paramo, a 51-year veteran of TCEQ and its predecessor agencies, has served in various capacities at the state. Sally first started working for the state in 1971 in data entry. She attended Austin Community College and moved on to work for Information Resources with reports and databases for internal and external customers until 2002. She then moved on to Water Supply Division, working under the Total Coliform Rule Team. Then in 2007, progressed onto the enforcement team under Drinking Water Special Functions, which is now under the Drinking Water Technical Review Team. Please welcome Sally Paramo.
Well, welcome everybody this afternoon. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about compliance assistance and how we at TCEQ can assist you in returning your violations to compliance. Pretty much I'm going to go over what a public water system is, an enforcement overview to kind of give you an idea of what I look at whenever I'm anticipating that your system might be meeting enforcement. This year, I'm going to go over most common violations, and the reason for that is I was working also throughout the year on several other program areas, and I saw where a lot of the same violations were coming in, and I decided, well, this year I'm going to show them what is really making their documents that come into TCEQ be deemed inadequate. That way, when y'all turn them in, and they'll be accepted first time around. I'll also go over post-enforcement a little bit. And then if y'all have concern about no longer being a public water system, then I'll show you where to reach out to in order to get y'all inactivated and how can I get help on my water system. So for public water system, a public water system is any system that provides drinking water for human consumption. It's at least 15 service connections, or y'all service at least 60 days out of the year. I get many phone calls throughout the year, and they let me know that they're no longer a public water system because they're no longer providing water, and they're providing drinking bottled water for their customers. Unfortunately, that's not enough to inactivate a system. Because in that sense, you're still providing water to your customers if you have facilities there for the system. And especially how the days are now at 100 and plus degrees, if somebody is needing to take some medication or something, and that's the only means of getting water, they can easily go to a business and they'll go use the facilities and they'll go ahead and get water from the sink to drink it. So they can take their medication, or maybe they can make baby formulas, so that's for that reason, that still makes you a public water system. If you were using the water for bathing and washing your dishes, the link is still there and you're still a public water system. So in those cases, we can inactivate you at the time. So I'm going to talk about enforcement, and on the enforcement, the way that we look at enforcement is we look at it as a particular tool. We call it the ETT tool, and we take your violations, being whatever it is, public notice, lead and copper, MCL violations, and we start taking the sum of each one. We break out each violation, compare it to the point that it is, and then we add them all up, and then we figure out whether y'all are meeting enforcement at equal to or greater than 11 points. The way we look at the point factor is if you have an acute violation, so the majority that I see are the nitrate acute violations, that's a 10-point violation, or we're looking at MCL violations in the higher levels, which makes you an acute. So it would be like your arsenic, trihalomethanes, any chemical MCL, you're looking at a 10-point if it's in an acute one. Now, if it's just a simple MCL violation, those are 5-point violations. So if you're testing every quarter, let's say on trihalomethanes, well, that first quarter that you exceeded is going to be 5 points. But then the following quarter, if you exceed it again, that's putting you at 10 points at that point. And then you only need one more point to make it 11. And if you don't post your public notice, unfortunately, bang, there you are, meeting enforcement criteria. The other type of violation is your 1-point violations, and that's pretty much your public notices, your chemical monitoring reporting, your lead and copper samples for sample tabs, water quality, initial, all of those are 1 points. So right now, if you're putting 2 and 2 together, then you'll see that let's say you have an MCL violation right now at your system, and then you're probably having some maybe lead and copper violations. So see how the points can start accumulating? So it's best that if you're not sure how to return that violation to compliance, you give us a call at TCEQ so we can put you in the right direction, because at that point, you have some time before you reach the 11-point mark to reach enforcement.
One of my virtual participants would like to ask you a question.
Okay.
The way you described enforcement, is this specific to PWS, or is this how all enforcement is calculated?
The enforcement that I'm talking to you about would be the water supply division. The regional office investigators, they go out and do compliance investigations, and they have their own means of doing enforcement. For us, it's central office. That would be your pretty much basic violations that you have to turn in your distribution samples on a monthly basis, or your lead and coppers, they're set up on schedules. Your chemicals are set up on schedules. So those are the violations that in our central office, those are the ones that we pick up. And that is a good question, because a lot of time people do call me regarding violations that region has imposed on them. And unfortunately, I can't help them with that because I don't have the expertise for that. So I have to refer them back to the region office. So our goals for enforcement, and especially now, that's why we have this outreach program, is because we're not in the, we don't look at it as a business to send systems to enforcement. We want to help you return these violations to compliance. So whenever I reach out to the systems, I say, okay, this is what you have. I'll send you an email, break it down, say these are the violations, and then I try to help systems to return to compliance. The majority of the time, if a system is willing to work with me, we can get them under the radar that they're not meeting enforcement, and at that point, I can stop the enforcement case, but it's up to the water system to be able to work with me in order to get those violations returned to compliance, because me, myself, I can't just return a violation to compliance. But if you're willing to reach out to me, I can work with you. I can tell you what are the most feasible violations we can return to compliance. And then if I get you right under the radar, but then you have some other violations that are still outstanding, we can focus on those. At the same time, you have more time instead of rushing to give me documents in order to get you under the radar. Pre-enforcement outreach. It's a program that we started here at TCEQ maybe like 3 years ago, because before, as soon as the system reached 11 points, our protocol was to send it to enforcement. If those violations, we reviewed them and they were valid, that's where it stopped. We just start doing the enforcement case, sending you to enforcement, and it would mean that more than likely your system was going to be facing fines. The fines would be determined by the Office of Compliance and Enforcement, so that would be out of our league. That's why I say whenever I'm reaching out to a system to help them return to compliance, it's important that y'all reach out to me as soon as you get that email, because my time frame is I usually get the case on a Monday, the list to review systems. By Wednesday, I have to report to my coworkers, okay, this system is already working with me. If you would put that one on the back burner and do that one last, you can proceed with the other ones, because I know this system is working with me. Now, if I don't get a call back or I don't get a reply, that you have received my outreach email within, we have 7,000 systems, and it's only one of me that's trying to get y'all to go below the level. So it's important that you reach out to me to start resolving your violations as soon as we can. So this is the process for whenever we send a system to enforcement. We have pre-enforcement. That's where the outreach comes in. We try to help the systems that are meeting enforcement to get below the 11 points. When they're below the 11 points, then I can pull that case from proceeding. If that doesn't happen, and at the end of our time, then we are still meeting enforcement, then we go ahead and write up the enforcement case, send it over to the Office of Compliance, of Enforcement and Compliance. They review the data, they make sure that those are valid violations, and then they'll proceed with putting the case together as far as penalty and what have you. Does it end there? No. Just because you've received a penalty, it doesn't stop there, because now you got penalties to work with. On top of that, the OCE department is going to give you have to meet some technical requirements in order to close out that open docket that you have. And that's where post-enforcement is going to come in, and I'll talk to you all about post-enforcement later. So the outreach program is, like I say, y'all have 11 points, y'all go to enforcement. It's the violations that whenever I get the violations on Monday, my coworker runs a listing that pulls all the systems that are meeting 11 points, and then that list also goes to each one of our compliance officers, because everybody has a specialty. If the compliance officer determines that one of those violations need to be returned to compliance, they do it at that time. Or if they feel like some of these violations is not in y'all's record yet, it becomes in y'all's record. And that means that there's just another point that we have to address as soon as we can. The documents pretty much are sent to compliance officers to be reviewed. We work a lot with the compliance officer whenever I'm trying to make sure that your violations are returned to compliance. And whenever y'all call me, lots of times I'll say, okay, lead and copper. There's too many lead and copper samples for y'all to collect, so it's best to reach out to the compliance officer so they can tell you, okay, are we talking about sample tap samples? Are we talking about water quality parameter samples? Are we talking about initial samples? Are we talking about corrosion control? There's just many topics and many more topics to come out next year on lead and copper. So for that reason, I'll start putting you in the right path that y'all need to return these violations to compliance. But many times it's best to talk to the compliance officer so they can give you direction, exactly tell you what it is that y'all need to do the first time, especially like water quality parameters. Those are on a quarterly basis, and then within that quarterly basis, you have to take in a periodic time, like every 2 months or so. So they'll tell you how many samples you have to collect, either from your distribution or your entry point. So it's best to talk to your compliance officer, and at the same time, you become familiar with that compliance officer. That way, if anything comes up, you know where to go to the right person. Whenever we are working with you on an outreach, what we do is, like I said, I'll take you up to the point where you are no longer meeting enforcement. But you're not going to stop hearing from me at that point, unfortunately, because there's still other violations that are unaddressed. And sometimes those violations could be MCLs, and everybody knows that MCLs don't get returned to compliance overnight. So, but I just want you to be aware that those violations are still there, and we can easily meet enforcement criteria again if we don't do anything about the other violations. So it's important that you continue and not stop working with me whenever you're below the level. That way we can, my goal is to try to get you out to 0 points if at all possible. So if I received a notice of violation, what should I do? Okay, the first thing you should do is make sure you read the letter completely, because many times in that letter, it's gonna tell you who to reach out to. It'll give you a specific individual's name probably in order for you to reach to that department, or it'll give you the telephone number or email where you can send it back to TCEQ and say, I needed assistance with this and that. If you have already addressed that violation, don't stop there. Just don't assume that that violation was returned to compliance just because you sent some samples in. I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with Drinking Water Watch, but there was some Drinking Water Watch presentations that were held at this conference, and hopefully y'all attended one of those, but you can easily give us a call if you're not familiar with it, and that's something that you should get familiar with, because you can go anytime into Drinking Water Watch and see what your violations are, how many do you have, should I reach out to TCEQ, and you yourself can, once you get the concept of the points, you yourself can figure out where you are as far as points are concerned, or how close are you to meeting enforcement. And if you go into Drinking Water Watch and look at the samples on the sample screen on the far right, on one screen that I'm gonna show you in a little bit, all you have to do is go look on the far right side, and there's a particular topic that says, has this system returned to compliance? If it says no, that's when you pick up the phone and say, hey, Sally, I see a no here. I'm not sure what to do. What is it going to take in order for me to return this violation to compliance? Don't ignore the no's. Sometimes you'll see no's you'll have a whole list, and you'll see them way below, and a lot of yes, but this one no. Even if it's an O violation, reach out to me if you see a no, and let me know that, hey, I see a violation way back. You might see one in 2007, you know. That one, if you give me a call, I'll look into it with a compliance officer, and many times we can return that violation to compliance. Maybe it was overlooked because there was multiple violations that came in that needed to be returned for that particular program, and they overlooked one. So your goal is to try to get all yeses for your water system. So this is a picture of Drinking Water Watch, and the link is up there. Like I said, everybody should be familiar with it. If nothing else, to check your point of contact information, to make sure that we have the right point of contact people to be sending the notice of violations, so you don't get into this predicament of not meeting enforcement. All you have to do is, once you get to that link, it's going to bring you this screen, and on the top blue arrow up there, you would put your public water system ID, and that's a 7-digit public water system ID number. The first 3 digits are the county that your water system is in. The last 4 digits is a unique number assigned to your system. So if you sell your system or you consolidate that system, well, then it's going to go away. But if you decided to retire and inactivate that system, or you sold your system, that public water system is going to still follow that water system. Okay, so once you put your water system ID number on the top, then you go to the bottom where it says search for water system, and you click on it, and then it'll bring a screen like that that's showing this. The yellow areas are the topics that you can go to. Kind of make it a point to always go to that first column, the very bottom one. It says all POC. That's all point of contact information that we have for the system. If you click on that and you see people that are no longer alive many times, or no longer with a water system, or they moved on, then pick up the phone, give us a call and say, hey, Sally, I looked at my point of contact information, and we have people there that I don't know who they are. Well, that means that those people moved on maybe to another water system, so you need to call us so we can put the correct point of contact for your system so we know that you'll be receiving the notice of violations in plenty of time to address them. Also on this topic here, you can look at, like, if you see RTC sample results on the third column. Those you can check your RTCR samples, see if TCEQ really received them or not. If you get a notice of violation letter and you said, I did do my samples last month, well, you can go into the RTCR sample results and see if you see one for that particular month that we're citing you for. Maybe for whatever reason, maybe the PWS ID wasn't written correctly, or maybe a residual wasn't listed on your chain of custody form. If a residual is not listed, I can tell you that violation, that particular sample is going to be deemed inadequate, and you will not be getting credit for it. So it's important that when you fill out the chain of custody form, that you list what type of sample it is, that you list the location that you're looking at, and make sure you list a chlorine residual on there. I know sometimes a customer says, well, I'm having trouble with my system. My chlorinator's not working, but I need to collect a sample because unfortunately I waited to the last day of the month. Well, you go collect that sample, but still under residual, you should list as 0, because if you go take that little tab and check it, it's going to say 0 because you don't have any chlorination. If you don't put a 0 there, a 0 is a number. So if you don't have anything there, it's going to be deemed inadequate. But if you put a 0 there, even though y'all collected the sample, that's valid information that are sending to us. And then I can talk to the compliance officer, see how they look at that particular sample. But I know if it's blank, you will not be getting credit for it. So some of the most common violations are for the mandatory language. And really, folks, on the mandatory language, I've gone out and practically filled out the paperwork for y'all. So if you're working with me and you're not returning violations to compliance, that's because, unfortunately, y'all not putting an effort behind it, because on my end, I'm putting an effort to try to get you under the radar of 11 points. So I complete the public notice for you on the mandatory language, and usually I highlight in yellow, like you see it here, the areas that need to be filled out in order for us to review it so we can return that violation to compliance. Many times under we are taking the following action, y'all return it to me back empty. And unfortunately, the compliance officer is going to deem it inadequate. So it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. You know, all you have to say is, all TCEQ wants to know is, I am doing this to return this violation to compliance. So let's say that you didn't collect a sample for January and February, and you're just filling out your public notice now because I've reached out to you. So in that corrective action, it could be, we failed to collect our notices in January and February, but we went out to collect a routine distribution sample in March and have returned to compliance. See, we don't need anything elaborate. We just need to know what is it that the public water system is doing to return that violation to compliance. And that goes for any program area. We need to know, what are you doing about the MCL trialhomethane in order to get that returned to compliance? After that, on the water system official name, the way you look at this one is, if one of your customers is reading this public notice and they say, I wonder what they're talking about here, we need for them to be able to reach somebody at your water system that can answer their questions, whatever they're reading there. And that's why we also require a telephone number. But sometimes you'd be surprised, under water system official, I get them back and it says water system official, Sally Paramo. Wrong. Yeah, it has to be somebody from your water system, because if they call me, I'm just going to refer them to y'all. So, and it might not be the right person, so it might have to go to somebody else. But that's why we ask for a water system official, telephone number, and then on the date delivered or the date posted, if you are meeting enforcement and your system only sets up monthly mail at the end of the month, and let's say today is the 9th, and I'm working with JCU, and I say, y'all need to send me the public notice so we can get these points down. You come back and you tell me, okay, I'm not going to be able to post this public notice until August 31st. This is the option that I'm going to give you. You can either go to enforcement because we cannot return this violation to compliance until August 31st, the date that you delivered or posted it. We can't use time. We can't put time ahead and be able to return that violation to compliance because it hasn't been addressed yet. So if you have to wait to the end of the month, you're going to wait to the end of the month. But when I get my cases on Monday, I have to report on Wednesday whether this system is working, that they are going to have it ready. And then we have Thursday and Friday. And then the next week, the following Friday, that's when your case is going to go and be approved. So see, we have to, my timeline is I got to get a response as soon as I can. And that's why I push a lot of water systems. You'll be seeing emails from me. I'm sorry I haven't heard from you. Can you give me a status on your water system? That's the reason that I have to push for y'all to communicate with me so we can get these items returned to compliance. The certificate of delivery, that's a very important document because this document serves as an affidavit stating that y'all did post a public notice. We have 7,000 systems. We don't have the manpower to go check each and every one of them. So for that reason, we have a certificate of delivery. You don't have to give your customers a copy of the certificate of delivery. And usually the certificate of delivery is the one that has a state seal on top. You give them a copy of the mandatory language, which is usually page 1, but the certificate of delivery, you're going to send both the mandatory language and the certificate of delivery to me to review. If not, it's going to be deemed inadequate if I don't have copies of both of them. On the certificate of delivery, on the top part where it says mail or direct delivery, if you are a community system, it's a given. You have to check off mail or direct delivery. That's just rules and regulations. As a community system, you have to select mail or direct delivery. And lots of times they tell me, can we do emails? The problem is a lot of people are not computer illiterate. Many times they don't have computers, or many times they just have no way of, they don't understand computers, period. So for that reason, you have to mail or direct delivery to each of your customers. That way, everybody is informed that this violation actually happened. And then that would be on the top part. On the bottom part, if you select one or the other, the mail or direct delivery or posting the PN in conspicuous places, if you are a transit non-community system, you can select posting the PN in conspicuous places, but you have to leave it up for a period of no less than 7 days. It's not like you can put it up one day and take it off the next. It's got to stay up there for a period of 7 days. And then on the bottom part, there's a variety that you can select there, but mainly I'm interested in one, that you make at least one selection there. I mean, if you put the internet, it's fine. Just give me the correct link to go to it, because we will check it to see whether that is a correct link. If not, they'll deem it inadequate. The other one, posting the PN in public places, you can put this at a community system. If y'all have a library or a community center nearby, they usually have bulletin boards there. Go ahead and put a copy of this, the mandatory language page, stamp it up there, and make sure it's up there for at least 7 days. But before I can return any violations to compliance, y'all gotta send me copies of the samples. Yes, sir.
Another virtual question. Would having something posted in the CCR count as a public notice?
It becomes a little bit more complicated, because if you can provide your CCR in the public notice, but you have to be able to provide the mandatory language to the systems that you're giving the CCR. So you give the CCR the copy of the CCR, and if you're posting a public notice, let's say for lead and copper, you have to include the mandatory language for the lead and copper, and then you have to include the certificate of delivery for the CCR, and you have to include the certificate of delivery for the public notice, because the public notice program area and the CCR program area have to get a copy of each one of them, also in order to return those violations to compliance. Another thing under the public notice, the signature on the bottom, make sure that it's an actual signature, because it can be electronic and it can be typed in. Again, this is serving as an affidavit stating that you are posting it, so for that reason, I have to get an actual signature. On the consumer confidence report, this one we have the same violations over and over. This is page 1 on the right side. You put your name, your telephone number, and at the bottom it asks for a Spanish telephone number. A Spanish-speaking individual wants to talk to you. If you don't have a Spanish-speaking individual, just bring the phone number that you have on top and put it on the bottom, because if that information is left out, then that's going to be deemed inadequate. That customer needs to at least have some means of communicating back to the system, even if y'all don't, because then the system at least has the opportunity to tell them, look, I can tell you what it is, but you're going to have to get somebody to translate for you, because we don't have somebody here that can translate. But at least you're giving that system an opportunity to ask their questions. This is the first page also of the CCR, but on the left side. Usually this is left blank whenever I receive it. You got to put your public water system on the blue line there, and then you insert the source, name of aquifer, reservoir, and or river, and then make sure you insert the county or the city that it's in. If any of that is left blank, unfortunately, you're going to get it back and say this needs to be updated and sent back to us. This page here on the CCR is usually like page 2 or 3. It depends on the CCR. You get information about source water. There you gotta insert your water system contact and the telephone number. Well, I included it on page 1. I know you included it on page 1, but I don't know if that individual that's reading it was aware that they read it already on page 1, so you have to include it here also. Otherwise, it's going to be deemed inadequate, and then we'll have to play back and forth again. The disinfectant residual table. If you don't know how to fill your disinfectant residual, reach out to our compliance officer for DOQORs. Right now, that's Emily Smith. And if it changes, you can easily call me and I can tell you who to refer to. But your disinfectant residual table, every block there has to be filled in. Our system already picked up some of the boxes for y'all, but all the other boxes have to be filled in. If not, it's going to be deemed inadequate. And again, if you don't know how to fill it out, reach out to your compliance officer, but do have your DOQR reports in front of you, because that individual is going to refer you back to your DOQRs to get the answers that you need to fill out those blanks. The CCR certificate of delivery also. That one, many times the calendar year is left blank. You have to put the calendar year because we don't know what calendar year it is. We want to make sure that there's no mistakes. So you put your calendar year there, and then you fill one of the methods for delivery on the top, and then give me one of the methods on the bottom. The COD signature also, right there where it says for the calendar year of, people leave it blank. I send it to the compliance officer, they deem it inadequate, I have to send it back to y'all. Y'all have to list the calendar year that this CCR is for, and make sure again that you give me a signature, not electronic and not typed in. Give me an actual signature, because again, it's serving as an affidavit. So for CCRs this year, so every year you have to mail in your CCR to TCEQ by July 1st. Well, right now, we are accepting them if you email them to the CCR program area. And it's there, it's listed there, and we'll review it. If it's all deemed adequate, if you didn't overlook any of the items that I just mentioned, then it'll be deemed adequate and you'll return it to compliance. At the same time, if you, let's say you had 2 other years prior to this one that you hadn't provided CCR. Well, if you turn in a good 2022 CCR and we deem it adequate, those other violations for the CCRs are going to be returned to compliance. So I would focus, if you have many or several CCRs, focus on your 22 to get it to us. And it's easy to run a template for a CCR. All you have to do is go into Drinking Water Watch, hit to the left, generate CCR, and then put in the year that you want to pull, and it'll pull your CCR for you. And then at that point, you just start filling out where you're supposed to, and those are the items that I went over a while ago on the CCR. Okay. So for lead and copper rule, lead and copper, this topic, I see a lot of it, and it's because if you don't stay on top of the lead and copper, your samples, you're going to be surprised because it's either going to increase on sample sites or the compliance period is going to change. Let's say you were set up on a triennial basis. Well, if you didn't collect those samples on a triennial basis, and when you're collecting these samples on a triennial basis, so you have triennial 22. So you had 20, 21, and 22. And really, we want you to collect your samples between June 1st and September 30th of the last year. So you go and collect your samples between June 1st and September 30th, and then send in the results to TCEQ 10 days after your compliance period ends. Let's say you didn't collect your samples triannually. You didn't collect them at all when you were on a 3-year period. So more than likely, your system is going to be changed to an annual schedule. And it's like, nobody told me. Well, you need to reach out to TCEQ and be aware of these things. If you don't collect, then your samples are going to be, for 23, you're on an annual basis. So that means you can collect your samples anywhere between June 1st and September 30th, have the results to TCEQ by October 10th, 10 days after the period ends. But the problem is, if you don't collect them annually, you miss already 2 cycles of it that we've given you. Now you're going to be put on a 6-month basis. And let's say you were on 5 months annually or 5 months triannually. Now you're going to go to 10 samples on a 6-month period. So now you have to collect 10 samples between January 1st and June 30th and have them to us 10 days after the compliance period in. And then again, you have to do it from July 1st to December 31st and have them to TCEQ by the 10th following the compliance period. It's important that if you're not sure, reach out to our compliance officers. We have several compliance officers that are willing to help you and assist you, and so you can get these samples correct. But it's up to the water system to know what their samples are. Now, we do have a program, we do have a means of you being notified when your samples are due. We started that recently, and that one, if you look at my email, you can see it way at the bottom. It says if you want to sign up to be notified when your schedules are, just register for it and click on this. All you have to do is go in there, click on that particular icon that I have there, and you'll get set up for being reminded when your samples are due and when they're not due. Sample sites for the lead and copper. You know, it kind of like, I look and I work hard with the systems, and I know the systems work hard to take lead and copper samples, because I know lead and copper samples are not the easiest thing to collect, because a lot of time you have customers that are not very helpful to the water system. If you need to get extra register sites, reach out to the compliance officer. Because if any of your violations doesn't match the registered sites that TCEQ have, and I've seen it, there's 10 samples that you have to collect, and I see the results, and there's 10 violations samples that were deemed inadequate. So no, they didn't get any points for it. We didn't recognize it. It seems like TCEQ ignored all of them. Well, the reason for that is they have to be from registered sites. So before you collect your samples, especially, I've seen them in big numbers, 20 that a water system has to collect, and half of them are deemed inadequate. When you're filling out your paperwork, make sure that when you put in your sample sites and your location sites, that they match and that they're matching TCEQ location sites. Otherwise, you will not get credit and you'll have a violation. On the chemical monitoring reporting, those also, if I send you an email and it says that we have so-and-so chemical samples, nitrates, rads, arsenic, whatever it is, if I send you that email and it says in that statement that we are missing these chemical violations, and you say that you already took care of it, I need for you to reach out to the labs, LCRA or DSHS, and find out whether you have an outstanding balance. If you have an outstanding balance, the lab will not send me the results until that lab fee is paid in full. If you try to pay some of them, yes, they'll take partial payment, but then I don't get the results. And if I don't get the results and you're meeting enforcement, I'm still gonna have to send you to enforcement, even though you paid for some samples already. The lab will not release sample results to TCEQ unless you have that item paid in full. So if, let's say you didn't allow the third-party contractor that TCEQ has to go out and collect the samples. Well, unfortunately, you don't get out of it that way either. What you have to do is you have to call our compliance officer or give me a call and I'll direct you to him, and he'll have to reschedule for your samples to be collected, and then once they're collected, they'll drop them off at the lab to be analyzed, and then once we get the results, those violations are returned to compliance. I really appreciate everybody that came today. If y'all have any questions, I'm gonna be sticking around for a little bit. And if y'all have any questions at all or need my business card so y'all can call me regarding your system, please pick one up at the front. Thank you.
Let's thank Ms. Paramo.